At my father's funeral, my aunt sneered, "Poor Olivia, still pretending she matters." My uncle said, "Her father died a broke crook." My cousins whispered about my pathetic family, mocking my shoes and my tears. Even my own mother said nothing. Then 3 black SUVs rolled up. Men in suits got out, bowed, and said, "Miss Olivia, the dawn is ready to see you." Can you imagine being thrown out into a stormy night, a single mother with nowhere to go, only to have your husband's sister, who you haven't seen in years, pull up in a luxury car and say, "Get in"? I need to tell you something important. About Sterling? That night, my world shattered, and then, impossibly, it began to twist into something far more shocking. My husband had been gone for 3 years. 3 long years since he vanished, and now his family, his own family, had kicked me out. I was standing at a bus station, the cold Atlanta rain lashing down, holding my sleeping son Zion. The thunder rumbled, tearing the quiet night to pieces, and it felt like it was tearing my already broken heart, too. The drops lashed against the window pane of the sheltered corner where I huddled, piercing my skin, freezing me to the bone. Zion, my sweet 5-year-old, had finally fallen asleep in my embrace, his chubby face still streaked with tears. He was likely still frightened by his grandmother's shouting, echoing even in his dreams. Just moments before, the heavy iron gate of their spacious 3-story house had slammed shut with a loud, final crash, cutting off any path back for my son and me. That house, where I had poured all my youth for the past 3 years, now felt colder and more terrifying than any alleyway. The vile words of my mother-in-law, Mrs. Celeste Vance, still echoed in my ears. "Sharp as knives, toxic as venom. Get out. Leave this house immediately. I don't want to see your face again. You're a worthless woman, a parasite, and you and your son are 2 burdens on this family." She had literally tossed my old suitcase out into the yard, clothes and belongings scattering in the rain, a cruel gesture. My father-in-law, Mr. Ellis Vance, just stood there silently, turning his face away. His silent complicity was more frightening than 1,000 words of expulsion. What had I done wrong? What had I possibly done wrong during those 3 years? Since the day Sterling, my beloved husband, vanished on a fateful business trip, I had sworn to live for him, to take care of his parents, to keep his family intact. For 3 long years, I had transformed myself from a girl who only knew books into a hard-working woman. I got up before dawn to prepare meals and clean the house. I worked at a nearby fulfillment center, and every single meager paycheck went entirely to my mother-in-law. I didn't dare keep even 1 cent for myself. I humbly endured every harshness, every piece of criticism from her. She found fault with my cooking, so I tried harder to make her favorite dishes. She called me provincial and unfashionable, so I wore my few old clothes over and over again, trying to make them look presentable. She mocked me for only giving her 1 grandson and having no more children afterward. All I could do was lower my head, stay silent, and swallow my tears. I thought that as long as I tried, as long as I was sincere, they would one day understand and love us, my son and me. But I was so terribly mistaken. I was too naive to believe in humanity in a place where money and selfishness triumphed over everything else. The memory of Sterling came rushing back, a painful wave. I remembered how this house used to be a home when he was still here. He was a gentle, warm husband. He always defended me against his mother's complaints. He'd say, "Mama, don't be too hard on her. Amara is still young. You can teach her slowly." He was also a loyal son. Every dollar he earned, he gave to his mother to manage, keeping only a little to take me out for my favorite snacks. He said he worked hard so that his parents and I could have a good life. But then came that fateful day. He had to go on a last-minute business trip to Chicago. That morning, he hugged me and little Zion, kissed our foreheads, and said, "Daddy's only going to be gone for a few days. Be good, you too." Who would have thought that would be the last time I would hear his voice, feel his warmth? His flight suffered an incident and disappeared without a trace over Lake Michigan. No wreckage, no sign of life. He simply vanished from my life, leaving behind an emptiness that nothing could fill. Since that day, my life turned into a living hell. My mother-in-law, whom I once respected, suddenly became a different person. She didn't show the slightest spark of compassion for the daughter-in-law who had lost her husband. In her eyes, Zion and I were just 2 thorns, 2 burdens she had to bear. She blamed me for everything. She said I was a jinx who had killed her son. She chastised me as a freeloader, even though I was the one working my back raw to support the family. And tonight, just because little Zion had accidentally broken her beloved porcelain vase, that was the final straw. She used that flimsy opportunity to throw my son and me onto the street in a stormy night without a single dollar. With my son in my arms, I stumbled aimlessly through the rain. The heavy suitcase I dragged over the wet asphalt sounded so miserable, a scratching protest against my fate. My tears mixed with the rain, salty and icy cold. Where was I supposed to go now? Back to my parents? My parents were old and frail, living in a poor rural town deep in Mississippi. I couldn't go back and become a burden to them. I kept running like a lost soul. When my feet were sore, I stopped in front of the downtown Atlanta bus terminal. The yellowish neon light of the station illuminated tired faces, failed lives similar to mine. I found a hidden corner under an awning, squatted down, and covered my son with my thin rain jacket. The boy stirred, snuggling his head against me, looking for warmth. "Mommy, I'm cold." I pulled him closer, trying to warm him with my body. My heart ached as if it were being sliced open. "My child, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I can't give you a complete home." I sat there amidst the loud and cold bus terminal, feeling utterly desperate. Where would the future lead for my son and me? Amidst this darkness, I could only whisper a weak prayer to my late husband. "Sterling, where are you? Do you see your son in me? Please protect us." The bus terminal at night was a different world, a world of failed lives, of faces etched with weariness and worry. The low murmur of announcements mixed with the shouting of a few street vendors, the roar of late bus engines, and the faint whimper of a child in a distant corner. Everything merged into a chaotic and melancholy symphony. I sat there, my back leaning against the cold concrete wall, feeling every gust of wind passing under the awning, carrying the damp chill of the rain and making me shiver incessantly. I pressed little Zion even tighter to me, trying to transfer the meager remaining warmth of my body to him. He slept, but his little shoulders occasionally twitched faintly. He must have been having a nightmare. I looked up at the pitch-black, starless sky. My son's future and mine were just as dark and uncertain. What now? Where would I go? What would I do? These questions drilled into my mind without an answer. I felt useless, so utterly powerless. I couldn't even offer my son a warm place to sleep. The despair rose up to my throat. I lowered my head onto my knees and bit my lip hard, stifling a scream. I couldn't cry. I had to be strong for my son. Right at that moment, when I felt close to collapse, a glaring beam of light suddenly pierced the rain and shone directly into the corner where my son and I were sitting. Reflexively, I raised my hand to shield my eyes. The gentle purr of the engine was distinctly different from the loud growl of the coach buses. A sleek black Cadillac Escalade slowly rolled to a stop right in front of me, only a few feet away. The car seemed to belong to another world, completely out of place in the dirty, busy environment of the bus terminal. A feeling of unease rose within me. Who was coming here at this hour with such a luxury car? The window slowly lowered, and the street light poured in, revealing a familiar yet strange face. Behind the wheel sat a young woman with fashionably dyed chestnut brown hair and lips painted with dark red lipstick. She wore large sunglasses, even though it was deep night. I froze. My heart seemed to stop beating. It was Jordan, Sterling's younger sister. It had been 3 years since I had last seen her. The last time was at her brother's symbolic funeral. Back then, she was still a young girl who dressed provocatively and always looked at me with a sidelong, resentful glance. She had never respectfully called me sister-in-law. After that day, I heard she had run away from home, living a wild life somewhere, and rarely came back. My mother-in-law cursed every time she mentioned her name, calling her an unruly daughter who brought misfortune to the family. And now she sat there in an expensive car with a completely different demeanor. No longer the disrespectful rebel of those days, but with a frightening coolness and composure. She took off the sunglasses. Her sharp eyes looked directly at me without any emotion. "Get in," she said. Her voice was monotonous. It was not a question, but a command. I remained rooted to the spot. My head spun. Why was she here? How did she know that my son and I were at the bus terminal? Had my mother-in-law called her? Or was this another trap set by her family? I clutched my son tighter, my eyes full of suspicion. "What are you doing here?" Jordan didn't answer my question. She just repeated it, her voice sounding a little more impatient now. I said, "Get in. Do you want your son to freeze to death here?" Her words hit my greatest fear at that moment. I looked down at little Zion, whose face was slightly pale from the cold. I couldn't let my son suffer anymore. But was it safe to follow her? As if she had read my thoughts, Jordan sighed, a sigh that contained both weariness and impatience. "You don't have to be afraid. I'm not my mother. I'm not here to hurt you." She paused, looked deep into my eyes, and then said something that made my whole body freeze. "Get in. I have a secret I want to show you." A secret about Sterling. Sterling, those 2 syllables shot through me like an electric shock. My heart, which had turned cold with despair, suddenly began to beat violently again. What kind of secret? He had been gone for 3 years. What secrets could there possibly be left? But what if there was a tiny, crazy hope that lit up in my head? What if she knew something? What if his disappearance wasn't as simple as I always thought? I looked into Jordan's eyes and found no falsehood. I only saw a deep sadness and a strange determination. I had no other choice. Even if it was a trap, I had to go for that tiny spark of hope about my husband and for a warm refuge for my son. I gritted my teeth, lifted little Zion, and dragged the suitcase toward the car. Jordan said nothing, just opened the back door. I carefully placed my son on the soft leather seats and then got in. The car door closed, separating my son and me from the loud, cold world outside. The warmth of the heater circulated through the car, driving away the cold. The car drove off gently, blending into the sparse night traffic. We both remained silent during the entire drive. I didn't ask her where she was taking me, and she didn't offer any further explanation. I just looked silently out the window. Atlanta at night, blurred by the rain, looked so strange. I tried to organize my confused thoughts. Jordan had changed so much. From an indifferent sister-in-law, she had become a mysterious and powerful woman. Where did she get the money for this car? And what was the secret she spoke of? The car finally stopped in front of a luxurious high-rise in a wealthy district, a place I would never have dared to dream of in my life. Jordan led my son and me into an apartment on the 25th floor. The apartment was spacious, clean, and fully furnished. A world away from the cramped room my son and I had occupied. "You and your nephew can rest here. You are safe for tonight." Jordan placed the key on the table. Her voice was still cool, but with a hint of tenderness. She looked at little Zion, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. Then she turned to me. Her gaze was complicated, pity and determination at once. "Tomorrow morning, once you've calmed down, I'll show you the real reason why Sterling couldn't come back." The luxury apartment sank into silence, with only the gentle hum of the air conditioning to be heard. I sat on the soft leather sofa, my eyes fixed on the large window that offered a view of Atlanta, which was slowly waking up after a rainy night. The first faint rays of sun broke through the gray clouds and illuminated the glittering skyscrapers, but they could not warm my ice-cold heart. The night before had been the first in 3 years that my son and I had slept in a soft bed in a warm, safe room. But I couldn't close my eyes. Every word, every image rolled back in my thoughts. My mother-in-law's shouting, my father-in-law's indifferent gaze, the despair at the bus terminal, and then Jordan's mysterious appearance. It was all like a chaotic and irrational slow-motion movie. Little Zion was still fast asleep in the room. Perhaps because he was too tired, or because this place was too peaceful compared to what he had just gone through. My son was deeply asleep, his small, rosy lips slightly smiling. When I looked at him, my heart twisted again. What would become of his future? He had lost his father and was now cast out by his own grandparents. I was his only mother, his only anchor. I couldn't give up. A faint click of the key sounded. Jordan entered, carrying a bag with still warm breakfast. She had changed clothes, wearing an elegant beige business suit that made her look mature and professional. She placed the bag on the table and handed me a glass of warm water. Eat something. You haven't had anything all night. I shook my head. My throat was dry. I had no appetite. I won't eat. Tell me, what is the secret you spoke of last night? Jordan looked at me. Her gaze was no longer cold as before, but filled with deep compassion. She pulled a chair over and sat across from me. I know you're in shock. I am too. For 3 years, I haven't been able to sleep peacefully. But before I speak, I want you to promise me one thing. No matter how cruel the truth is, you must stay calm for little Zion and also for Sterling. When she mentioned my husband, my heart ached again. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my breathing. Fine, I promise. Jordan said nothing more, but pulled out a small recorder and a thin folder of documents from her designer handbag. She placed the device on the table and pressed play. A faint recording began. The sound wasn't very clear. It seemed to have been secretly recorded. But I recognized the voices. A deep man's voice and a thin, nagging woman's voice. The voices of my father-in-law and my mother-in-law. Stop it. Constantly chastising the daughter-in-law. Aren't you afraid she'll suspect something? Mr. Ellis's voice sounded annoyed. And if she suspects, what can that country bumpkin do? It's a blessing that I even let her live in this house. My son is dead. She has become worthless. Don't you see it? She and her son are just 2 hungry mouths feeding off this house every day. Mrs. Celeste's voice was sharp as a razor. But she's the mother of our grandson. Grandson, wake up. Sterling is gone. The line of this house is finished. I tell you, I will find a way to get rid of both of them when the time is right. This house belongs to us, and Sterling's inheritance belongs to us too. I won't give that woman a single dollar. The recording ended. I sat there frozen, my hands tightly clenched, my nails digging so deep into my flesh that I bled without noticing. So that was it. In their eyes, my son and I were nothing but parasites. My sincerity, my sacrifice over the past 3 years, was nothing but despicable stupidity to them. They didn't just hate me. They had long been planning to expel me. The love they showed for their only grandson was apparently also just pretense. Jordan looked at me, her voice dropping. See, this is their true face. I secretly placed this recording device in Dad's study almost a year ago. I had my suspicions for a long time, but only when I heard those words did I truly believe that Sterling's disappearance was no accident. She pushed the folder towards me. Look at this. I opened the folder, trembling. The first page was a bank statement from Sterling's account. I immediately recognized that it was his salary account. But what shocked me was the withdrawal. Shortly before his fateful business trip, a very large amount, almost $200,000, had been withdrawn from the account. Next to it was the recipient's signature. I couldn't forget that handwriting. It was Mr. Ellis Vance's signature. $200,000? Why so much money? And why did my father-in-law withdraw it? I stammered, my head spinning. That's Sterling's entire savings. I investigated, Jordan said. The money was immediately transferred to another account after the withdrawal, and the holder of that account. Jordan paused, looked straight into my eyes. Is my mother, Mrs. Celeste Vance. The next page of the folder was a statement from a brokerage firm. Mrs. Celeste Vance had invested the entire $200,000 in stocks, but she had lost everything. Within a few days, that huge sum was almost completely gone. My world collapsed before my eyes. All the scattered puzzle pieces fit together into a terrible picture. Sterling's disappearance, a large money withdrawal, and the changed attitude of my in-laws. I still don't have direct proof, Jordan said bitterly. But I believe they harmed Sterling because of this money. Maybe he found out that they had secretly taken his money and gambled it away. There was a fierce argument and then. She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. Tears streamed from my eyes again, but this time they were not tears of offense, but tears of fury and the deepest pain. My husband, the man I loved, may have been killed by his own parents because of money. This truth was crueler than anything I could have imagined. They had not only stolen my husband, but also my last faith in human bonds. Was there an even more terrible secret waiting for me behind all this? And I, a penniless woman, what should I do to confront these cruel people? The whole room fell into frightening silence. Only my faint sobbing could be heard. Every word from Jordan, every number on the bank statement, pierced my already scarred heart like thousands of invisible needles. Sterling, my husband, this gentle, loyal man, could he truly have been hurt by the people he loved and trusted the most? I dared not believe it, didn't want to believe it, but the evidence lay cold and unforgiving before me. I sank my face onto the table. My shoulders convulsed. The feeling of powerlessness, pain, and rage flooded my chest so much that I could barely breathe. For 3 years, I had lived a lie. I had mourned an accident, but it was perhaps a perfectly covered-up murder. Jordan said nothing, just gently placed her hand on my shoulder and patted it softly. Her silent comfort had more power at that moment than any words. She was not just the sister-in-law I had once resented. She was Sterling's only relative, the only one standing on my side in this fight. After a long time, when I gradually calmed down and only softly wept, I lifted my head. My swollen eyes looked at Jordan. Why? Why are you only telling me this now? And why are you helping me? That was the biggest question in my heart. Why was a seemingly indifferent, rebellious girl doing all this in secret? Jordan looked out the window, her gaze distant, as if sinking into a past memory. Her voice lost its sharp coldness and was filled with deep sadness. Because Sterling is the only person in this world who truly loved me. She began to tell a story I had never heard before. It turned out that behind the rebellious exterior was a deeply wounded soul. I wasn't born a son. That was my mother, Mrs. Celeste's biggest disappointment. My mother always longed for a second son to continue the family legacy and strengthen the family. When I was born a girl, she almost went crazy. My childhood was marked by baseless beatings and criticisms that compared me to Sterling. In her eyes, I was a useless daughter, a failure. Tears began to run down Jordan's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. Only Sterling was always by my side, protecting me. Every time Mom hit me, he jumped in to shield me and take the blows for me. He secretly saved his allowance and bought me little gifts that I liked. He was the only one who listened to me, the only one who believed I wasn't a lost cause. She wept. It was the first time I had seen her cry. The tears of an abandoned child craving love. When Sterling disappeared, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that such a cautious person could so easily have an accident. I started watching my parents' behavior. Instead of grief, I only saw fear, worry, and a strange sense of relief. That's when I knew something was wrong. So, that was it. The love for her deceased brother was Jordan's motivation for doing all this. She wasn't an indifferent girl. She only used her rough exterior to hide her vulnerable heart. A feeling of compassion and a little respect flowed through me. So, what have you been doing for the past 3 years? I ran away from home. Jordan wiped away her tears. I couldn't live in a house where I suspected my own parents of murder. I took all kinds of jobs, from serving in a bar to working as a saleswoman. With the money I earned, I hired a private investigator to secretly conduct inquiries. This car, this apartment, it all belongs to a good friend who helped me. He was also a close friend of Sterling's before. Jordan's story stunned me. She had fought alone for 3 years, a silent and dangerous battle. While I merely surrendered to my fate and cried, she, a young woman, had the courage to stand up and seek the truth. What do we do now? I asked. My voice was no longer weak as before. The look I gave Jordan was full of determination. We can't let them get away with this. The flame of hatred and the yearning for justice for my husband blazed wildly within me. Weakness and fear had given way to an iron will. I was no longer the provincial, enduring Amara of yesterday. Jordan looked at me, a glimmer of hope shining in her eyes. I knew you would say that. I have prepared everything. But this fight won't be easy. My parents are not simple people. They have money. They have contacts. We need more evidence, irrefutable evidence to expose their crimes. Jordan's words sounded like a battle cry. I knew that from this moment on we were allies, comrades who would walk this path together until the end. Sterling, Jordan continued thoughtfully, he was a very cautious person. I believe that before anything happened, he surely left a clue, something only his closest confidants could find. Her words were like a key opening a forgotten compartment in my memory. I suddenly remembered that about a week before his business trip, he had given me a small, finely carved wooden box. He said it was a memory box for the two of us. He instructed me to hide it well, and said something very strange, if I can't return one day, open it. Everything you need to know is inside. Back then, I thought he was just joking and scolded him not to talk like that. I had hidden the box deep in my closet under the old suitcase and had almost forgotten its existence. Could the decisive clue really lie in this old box? And what shocking secret did it hold inside the wooden box? The blurred memory suddenly became strangely clear, like a lightning bolt streaking through the dark sky of my mind. Sterling's words that day, the look in his eyes when he gave me the box, all of it suddenly took on a completely different meaning. It was not a casual joke. It was a final will, a preparation for the worst. My heart began to beat frantically, excited and terrified at once. The box? Yes, there is a wooden box. I cried excitedly. My voice trembled. I quickly told Jordan about the memory box and Sterling's strange hint. When I finished, Jordan's eyes lit up. Where is it? Where's that box, Amara? It's still in that house, I answered quietly. I hid it under the old suitcase in the closet in our bedroom. My answer was like a punch to the face of the hope that had just been ignited. That house? It was the lion's den now. I had been expelled. How was I supposed to go back to retrieve the box? Besides, after 3 years, was it still there, or had Mrs. Celeste accidentally thrown it away while cleaning up? Jordan recognized the problem. She frowned, pacing back and forth in the room. Her face was thoughtful. No, that won't work. We have to get it back. I'm sure everything is inside. But how do we get into the house now? We sat in silence, both lost in thought. Breaking in was too dangerous. During the day, Mrs. Celeste and Mr. Ellis were almost always at home. At night, the street wasn't deserted. Even the slightest noise would give us away. Should every hope end right before that cold iron gate? Or, I began hesitantly, a bold thought having just entered my mind, or I go back. Are you crazy? Jordan cried, turning to me. If you go back, it's like putting yourself in the trap. My mother is furious because she can't find you. If you go back, she won't leave you alone. Precisely because she is furious, I said. My voice was calmer and more determined. That is our chance. She threw me out because she hates me, but deep down, she still despises me. She thinks I'm a dumb goose who is easy to exploit. I will go back, not to resist, but to plead for forgiveness. Jordan looked at me, astonished, not yet understanding my intention. I explained my plan further. I will play the role of the repentant wife, the poor daughter-in-law who has recognized her mistake. I will cry and beg her to take me back. I will say I can't live without the family. I can't raise my child alone. I will say that I've seen the error of my ways. From now on, I will blindly obey her. Given her arrogant and controlling nature, she will surely soften. She won't miss the opportunity to continue tormenting and humiliating me. She will take me back, but in the role of an unpaid maid. After hearing my plan, Jordan was silent for a while. There was worry in her eyes, but also admiration. Amara, are you sure? This is too dangerous. What if she doesn't believe you? There is no other way, I said firmly. This is the only way we can legally return to that house. I will find the opportunity to retrieve the box. As soon as we have it in our hands, we will disappear immediately. I just have to act for a few days. I can do this. My determination in my eyes seemed to convince Jordan. She nodded, albeit full of worry. All right. If you've decided, I will support you, but you must promise me to be extremely careful, to always have your cell phone with you, and to have the recording function ready. If anything goes wrong, you must inform me immediately. With that, the plan was decided. The next morning, I put on my oldest, faded clothes. I deliberately didn't comb my hair so that it looked somewhat disheveled. I also used a little makeup to make my face look haggard and more exhausted. I instructed Jordan to take care of little Zion and to tell him that mommy had to go away for a few days and then would come back. As I looked at my sleeping son, my heart clenched. Asterisk, my child, wait for me. I'm going to get justice for your father, and then I'll be back. Asterisk, I took a taxi back to the familiar street. As I stood in front of the iron gate of the house that had once belonged to me, my heart was full of conflicting emotions. I took a deep breath, suppressed my hatred and contempt, and put on my saddest and most miserable face. I raised my trembling hand and gently knocked on the gate. Who is it? Mrs. Celeste's voice rang out from the house, harsh and annoyed. I didn't answer, but kept knocking. The knocking became fainter and fainter. After a while, the gate opened. Mrs. Celeste froze when she saw me and frowned. You, what are you doing here? I said nothing, just sank to my knees right in front of her onto the cement ground that was still damp from the night's rain. Then I burst into tears, the tears of regret and pain that I had practiced all night. Mama, I'm sorry, Mama. Please forgive me. Mrs. Celeste was stunned by my action. She probably never expected that the daughter-in-law she had just thrown out would now return to beg her like a lost dog. Her face relaxed. The surprise quickly gave way to a triumphant smile. The smile of a superior looking down at an inferior. So you've realized it? I thought you were stubborn. You couldn't survive out there and came back here to cling on, huh? Yes. I beg you, Mama. Without you, without the family, I don't know how I could live. Please give me a chance to survive. I continued to sob, lowering my head to the ground. My performance seemed to work. Mrs. Celeste was no longer so aggressive. Her voice instead took on a condescending tone. All right, stand up. You can come back, but from now on, you must know your place and listen to me in everything. No backtalk. Can you do that? Yes. Yes, I can do that. I'm so grateful to you, Mama. I stood up with difficulty. My head bowed, not daring to look directly at her. I knew that the gates of hell had opened for me again. But this time, I entered not as a victim, but as a warrior, secretly waiting for the moment to strike the decisive blow. The door closed behind me, and I was officially back in the place I had sworn not to enter again just 2 days ago. The atmosphere in the house was still oppressive and cold, perhaps even more stifling. Mr. Ellis sat in the living room reading the newspaper. When he saw me, he merely glanced over his reading glasses, then lowered his head and said nothing. His silence was more frightening than Mrs. Celeste's curses. It showed that contempt and resentment for me were deeply entrenched in this man's bones. What are you standing around for? Don't you see how messy the house is? Start cleaning up. Mrs. Celeste's voice rang out again. She returned to her usual commanding tone. From now on, you have to take care of everything in this house. 3 meals a day. The house must be sparkling clean. Don't you dare make me remind you. Yes, I know, Mama, I replied softly, quickly putting away my empty bag and starting to work. The life of an unpaid maid had officially begun. Mrs. Celeste seemed intent on fully exploiting my repentance. She made me work from early morning until late at night. Cleaning, washing, cooking. I had no break. She intentionally created messes for me to clean up and deliberately criticized my cooking to humiliate me in front of Mr. Ellis. I gritted my teeth and endured everything. Every swear word, every contemptuous look from them was etched into my mind and became my motivation to quickly find the truth. My only goal now was the wooden box, but reaching it was harder than I had imagined. My husband's and my bedroom, the only private space I had, was now occupied by Mrs. Celeste. She said her downstairs room was too damp. She wanted to move upstairs where it was fresher. I knew it was just an excuse. She wanted to take over my space to erase every trace of me from this house. More importantly, she wanted to control me. I was not allowed to enter that room without her permission. Every time I walked past the closed bedroom door, my heart burned. The box, the only clue, was in there. Only a wall away from me, but unreachable. How was I supposed to get in now? I couldn't act recklessly. The slightest mistake would instantly make Mrs. Celeste suspicious, and my plan would fail. I had to be patient, wait for the right moment. I continued to play the role of the poor, understanding daughter-in-law. I worked harder, endured more, and never complained. Even when Mrs. Celeste intentionally spilled a bowl of hot soup over my feet, I bit my teeth, endured the pain, and hurriedly apologized to her for standing in the way. My almost subservient endurance seemed to convince her completely. She began to lower her guard. The opportunity finally arose on a Saturday afternoon, about 3 days after I had returned. That day, Mrs. Celeste had an important meeting with her superficial friends. She got dressed up, instructed me to take good care of the house, and left in the early afternoon. Mr. Ellis, as usual, had gone to the country club early. The large house now belonged to me alone. My heart pounded violently. Now was the moment. I quickly finished all the housework, making sure everything was clean and tidy. Then I crept to the second floor, heading toward the familiar bedroom. In front of the door, I took a deep breath to calm myself. Mrs. Celeste had locked the door. I had expected that. I pulled a thin metal hairpin from my apron pocket. That was a technique I had learned from old crime shows. I never thought I would need it in this situation. Carefully, I inserted the hairpin into the keyhole. My hand trembled. The sound of the metal was deafening in the silence. I held my breath and listened. After some fumbling, a faint click sounded. The door was open. I was overjoyed. I quickly slipped inside and pulled the door shut behind me. The room hadn't changed much. Only almost all my things had been removed and replaced by Mrs. Celeste's belongings. The cheap perfume smell of hers hung heavily in the air. I didn't have much time. I went straight to the old particle board closet where I had hidden the suitcase. I opened the closet. My heart sank. The suitcase was not there. Horrified, I searched the entire closet. Nothing. I looked around the room but couldn't find it. Had she thrown it away? Disappointment and fear overwhelmed me. If I lost the box, all my efforts and Jordan's efforts would have been in vain. Every hope of finding the truth about Sterling would be shattered. I was about to cry, but my reason told me to stay calm. Mrs. Celeste was a greedy woman. A suitcase, even if it was old, was still good. She wouldn't just throw it away. She must have hidden it somewhere. I started searching the entire room, under the bed, behind the curtains, but nothing. Time was running out. The hands of the clock were moving toward 4 p.m. Mrs. Celeste would be back soon. I panicked. Just at that moment, my gaze fell on the top of the closet. There was a small gap between the top of the closet and the ceiling. And there, covered by a thick layer of dust, lay my old suitcase. I felt like a treasure hunter. I quickly pulled a chair over, climbed up, and laboriously pulled the heavy suitcase down. It was heavier than I thought. I laid it on the bed and opened it, trembling. My old clothes were still inside. I rummaged through everything and finally found the finely carved wooden box wrapped in an old velvet cloth at the bottom. It was still there. With the box in my hand, I felt as if I were holding my husband's whole life. I opened it hastily, but inside there was no notebook, no key. It was empty. Only a yellowed wedding photo of Sterling and me lay inside. I froze. What did that mean? Sterling's instruction, my sacrifice, all just to find an empty box? Just at that moment, I heard the familiar engine sound of Mrs. Celeste's car in front of the gate. She was back, and I was stuck in her locked room with an even bigger secret I had just uncovered. The faint click of the keychain in front of the gate was clearly audible. Every sound was sharp as a stab in my strained nerves. Mrs. Celeste was back. My whole body froze. My mind went blank. I was in her room. The suitcase was open on the bed, and in my hand was the empty wooden box. Asterisk, everything was an irrefutable mess. Being caught. Asterisk, those two words flashed in my head, cold and frightening. If she discovered me, everything was over. She would not only throw me out of the house again, but perhaps do something far worse. Asterisk, stay calm. You must stay calm. Asterisk, I told myself, trying to force myself to think. The creaking sound of the iron gate opening, followed by footsteps in the yard. I didn't have much time left. I hastily and messily stuffed the clothes back into the suitcase, placed the empty box inside, and pushed the heavy suitcase back onto the top of the closet with all my might. Sweat broke out. My head was wet. As soon as I finished, I jumped down and quickly put the chair back in its old place. But what about the door? I had picked the lock to get in. How could I lock it again from the inside? Just at that moment, I heard Mrs. Celeste talking to someone in the yard, probably a neighbor. That gave me a few precious seconds. I rushed to the window and looked out. The height from the second floor wasn't too great, and there was an old corrugated iron roof below. If I jumped down, it would make noise. No, that wouldn't work. I looked around the room desperately, and then my gaze fell on the wedding photo of Sterling and me. The only photo that was in the box. A crazy but brilliant thought flashed. I took the photo in my trembling hand and turned it over. The backing cardboard had come loose at one corner. I carefully slid my fingernail underneath, and behold, under the thin cardboard was no notebook and no key. It was a tiny micro SD card, a memory card for digital cameras, firmly attached to the back of the photo with a piece of transparent tape. My heart hammered like crazy. Asterisk, this was it. The clue, asterisk, Sterling hadn't tricked me. He had hidden it where no one would suspect. Right behind our happy smiles in the wedding photo, a place that was safe and full of meaning. Mrs. Celeste's voice was already audible under the stairs. No more time. I quickly ripped off the memory card, put it in my innermost jacket pocket, and put the photo back in the empty box. I had to stage a false crime scene. I ran to the door and kicked the door frame with all my might. The old wooden door burst open with a loud bang. The lock broke off. Immediately afterward, I let out a frightened scream. Thieves. Thieves. Mama. I stormed out of the room, ran down the stairs, looking panicked. My hair disheveled. Mrs. Celeste, who was just coming up the stairs, froze when she saw me. What? What are you saying? The room. Mama's room. There are thieves. I gasped, pointing upstairs. I heard a noise, ran up, and the door was broken open. The thief just fled through the window. Mama, please. When Mrs. Celeste heard the two words, Mama's room, her face changed color. She no longer paid attention to me, but stormed up the stairs. She was afraid for her money and the valuables she had hidden there. I stood at the foot of the stairs, my heart pounding like a drum. But I sighed with relief. The plan was successful for now. Mrs. Celeste stormed into the room, saw the chaos, and rushed to the bedside table where she knocked everything over. When she saw that her jewelry box and the bundle of cash she had hidden under a pile of clothes were still there, she sighed in relief. Those were probably the most valuable things to her. She turned around, saw the broken door, and then looked at me with suspicious eyes. Did you see him? What did he steal? No, it was too dark. I couldn't recognize him. He ran away quickly, I stammered, maintaining my frightened expression. I don't know if anything is missing either, Mama. I saw that he also rummaged through the old suitcase on the closet. When she heard suitcase, Mrs. Celeste flinched, but quickly calmed down. What could he have stolen from your old suitcase? She mumbled, beginning her usual monologue. This house is truly cursed. As soon as I'm gone, someone breaks in. With this kind of security, how is one supposed to live? This is all your fault, you jinx. I just lowered my head silently and let her curse. In my heart at that moment, there was only excitement for the memory card. What secret did it hold? Would it be the key to solving everything? I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't dare stay in that house for another second. I lied to Mrs. Celeste that I was too scared and wanted to stay at a friend's house for a few days to calm down. She was too busy dealing with the broken door and her fear of loss to stop me. I quickly left with only one goal in mind, to find a place where I could read the contents of the memory card. I took the last bus and traveled to an old student apartment complex where Jordan was already waiting for me. It was a small, simple room, one of the secret bases she had prepared. Jordan was already waiting there with a laptop. Are you okay? I was worried. She asked hurriedly when she saw my exhausted appearance. I'm okay. I made it, I said, trembling, pulling the memory card out of my jacket pocket. But it's not a notebook or keys. It's this. Jordan took the memory card in her hand. Her eyes were full of surprise and tension. She inserted the card into the laptop. The screen lit up, and only a single folder with the name, The Truth, appeared. My heart seemed to stop. Jordan's hand trembled as she opened the folder with the mouse. Inside were numerous video files named sequentially, and the first file was recorded exactly 3 days before Sterling's disappearance. Would the terrible truth soon come to light? And did it have to do with my in-laws, or was there another power behind it? The small room suddenly became strangely oppressive. The faint light of the laptop illuminated both our faces, which were taut like a stretched wire. Jordan's index finger trembled, hovering over the mouse as if she didn't yet dare to face the truth that was about to be revealed. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heartbeat in my chest. "Open it," I said hoarsely. Jordan nodded and decisively clicked on the first video file. The video began without sound, only images. It was a hidden recording from a high angle, probably concealed somewhere in Sterling's study at home. I immediately recognized the familiar room, the wooden table, the bookshelf, and the potted plant I always watered. Sterling sat across from a strange man. The man was about the age of my father-in-law, elegantly dressed, but his face had something sly about it. They were having a very tense conversation. Sterling repeatedly shook his head. His face was resolute. The other man slammed his hand on the table, pointing his finger at Sterling. His posture was extremely angry. The argument ended. The strange man walked out annoyed. Sterling sat there alone, leaning his head on the desk, his hands clutching his hair. I could feel his extreme exhaustion and powerlessness in his every gesture. The video ended abruptly. "Who is that?" I asked Jordan. My heart was full of confusion. "I don't know," Jordan said, shaking her head. Her face was confused, too. I never heard our parents talk about him. We quickly opened the next videos. The subsequent video clips were similar, but Sterling's conversation partners had changed. Sometimes it was a rough-looking man with tattoos, sometimes an elegantly dressed woman. They all met Sterling secretly, and every conversation ended in tension. Sterling seemed to be cornered by an invisible force. And then we opened the last video. It was recorded only 1 day before his disappearance. This time, the man sitting across from Sterling was no stranger. It was Mr. Ellis Vance, my father-in-law. In the video, Mr. Ellis laid a thick folder of documents and a plane ticket on the table. He said something and pushed them towards Sterling. Sterling didn't look at the documents. He just stared at his father. His gaze was full of pain and disappointment. Then he slowly stood up, knocked over his chair, and shouted something that we couldn't hear. His face was red. His hands were clenched into fists. It was the first time I had seen him so angry. Mr. Ellis also jumped up. Father and son stood facing each other. The air was so tense that I could feel it through the screen. Finally, Sterling shook his head desperately and left the study. The door slammed. Mr. Ellis sank onto the chair, holding his head in his hands. The video ended there, leaving a huge void and thousands of unanswered questions in our hearts. It was clear that Sterling's disappearance was not only related to Mrs. Celeste and the gambling debt, but was much more complex and dangerous. My father-in-law, the weak, silent man I thought was harmless, was a crucial link in this entire conspiracy. What had he given Sterling? Where did the plane ticket lead? Why were they arguing so fiercely? "Amara, look here." Jordan's voice trembled. She pointed to a small detail on the screen that I had overlooked. During the argument, part of the document folder that Mr. Ellis had handed over was lifted by the wind. The camera had managed to record a few faint lines. Jordan zoomed the image in as much as possible. Although it was very difficult to read, we could make out 2 words: land conveyance contract. Alpharetta. Alpharetta. That name hit me like lightning. I remembered that shortly before his disappearance, Sterling had told me about a large project his company was pursuing, an eco-housing development project in Alpharetta. He had poured his heart into it, staying up many nights to finalize the plan. He said that if this project was successful, it would be a major breakthrough in his career. But then he suddenly said that the project had been cancelled due to some legal problems. He was very sad and disappointed then, but I didn't ask further. Could it be? Jordan and I looked at each other, the same thought in our heads. Could it be that the project hadn't been cancelled at all, but stolen by his own parents? And who were these strangers in this chain of intrigue? My head spun. The truth was not a straight line, but a tangled web of lies and crimes. I felt like a moth. The more I searched for the light, the greater the danger of being burned. "We must find the first strange man," Jordan said, her voice full of determination. "He's the only one who can tell us the whole truth about the Alpharetta project." But how are we supposed to find him? We only had a faint video clip, no sound, no further information. Our investigation hit another dead end. While Jordan and I felt helpless, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. "Jordan, look at the last video again. When Sterling knocked over the chair, did you notice if there was anything unusual on his desk?" Jordan rewound the video, and we both stared at the screen, and then we saw it. In the brief moment the chair fell, it revealed a small object that was very well hidden under the desk, a black USB flash drive fastened with tape. The black USB stick, a small, ordinary object, appeared in an unusual way. It was like a last glimmer of hope lighting up in the dense darkness of intrigue and lies. Jordan's and my heart started racing again. Asterisk Sterling. He had foreseen everything. Asterisk, he hadn't left the clue in the wooden box, but in a place that Mrs. Celeste would never suspect, right under the desk where she often sat. It must still be there. Absolutely. Jordan cried softly. Her voice was full of excitement. My mother is meticulous, but she would never bend down under the desk to clean. She would only send the cleaning lady, and she wouldn't notice such a small object. But how are we going to get it? I asked. The worry returned. If you go back now, your mother will surely not leave you alone. She's probably still suspicious because of the last break-in. True. Returning to that house again was extremely dangerous. After the staged break-in, Mrs. Celeste had certainly increased her vigilance. My plan to play the poor woman couldn't work a second time. We needed another plan. Older, more surprising. Jordan thought for a moment, then snapped her fingers. Or we stage a real break-in. I looked at her confused, not understanding her intention. Jordan winked at me, a rare mischievous smile on her lips. We won't do it ourselves. We'll have someone else do it. Have you forgotten? My parents are deeply in debt. They have many enemies. I understood what she meant. Jordan's plan was extremely risky, but not unreasonable. What are you planning? Among the loan sharks my parents owe money to, there's a notorious gangster named Scarface S. He is known for his ruthlessness and audacity. My parents have put him off several times. I will try to feed him a hint that my parents have just sold some property and are hiding a large amount of cash at home. With his greed, he won't miss this opportunity. He will send people to break into the house and collect debts. And in the chaos, we will have our chance. This plan made me shudder. Isn't that too dangerous? What if they harm your parents? Jordan's eyes were sad for a moment, but quickly turned cold. Don't worry, people like Scarface S only need money. They aren't stupid enough to commit murder and get into more trouble. Besides, that's the price they have to pay for what they did to Sterling. They cornered us, so they shouldn't blame us for resorting to drastic measures. Jordan's determination convinced me. I knew that to take on old foxes, we sometimes had to be crueler than them. In the following days, we began to act. Jordan used her contacts in the underworld to feed information to Scarface S. Just as she had said, Scarface S's crew began to observe my in-laws' house only one day later. Everything was going according to plan. My task was to prepare for our own break-in. I couldn't go alone. I needed someone who could distract and provide backup. And the person I thought of was Sterling's close friend who had been helping Jordan all this time. His name was Elias Monroe, a talented engineer who was also very quick and brave. After hearing Jordan's entire story, Elias immediately agreed to help. He said he owed Sterling a lifelong debt. Finally, the decisive night came. It was a night without a moon or stars. The whole street was plunged into darkness and silence. According to Jordan's information, Scarface S would strike that night. Around 1 a.m., a small unmarked van quietly stopped at the end of the alley. Two masked men in black clothing jumped out, quickly climbed over the fence, and disappeared into Mrs. Celeste Vance's yard. There, inside, Elias whispered through the small walkie-talkie we had prepared. He was sitting in a car on the opposite side of the street, observing every movement. We are ready, I replied. My heart was pounding wildly. Jordan and I hid in a small alley behind the house, directly under the study window. Only a few minutes later, we heard the loud sound of breaking glass from the front, followed by Mrs. Celeste's panicked, screaming thieves. Robbers. Help me. The plan had begun. Elias immediately called the local police and reported a robbery. At the same time, Jordan called Mrs. Celeste's landline with another cell phone. Mrs. Celeste, who was panicking, answered the phone, hoping someone was calling to help. Hello, help me. Shut your mouth, old woman. Jordan's voice, which was modified by a voice changer software, sounded threatening. I'm from Scarface S. Your husband owes us money. We came today to get our money back. If you scream again, I'll let you meet your son. When Mrs. Celeste heard the two words, your son, she fell silent. She stammered fearfully. How much do you want? All the cash and all the valuables in the house. Cooperate, or it will be bad. Jordan growled and hung up. Jordan's distraction maneuver was successful, drawing all the attention of Mrs. Celeste and the robbers to the front. Meanwhile, on the back of the house, I quickly climbed onto the second-floor balcony with a small rope ladder that Elias had prepared. I slipped through the study window, which I had cautiously left slightly ajar. The room was pitch dark, but I knew my way around. I didn't turn on the light, but only used the faint light of my mini flashlight and quickly went to the desk. I knelt down, reached my hand under the desk, and my heart stopped. He was still there. The small, cold USB stick lay in my palm. I was close to tears of joy, but this was not the moment. I had to get out of here immediately. But just as I prepared to climb out, a faint click sounded from the door. Someone was opening the door to the room. The dry click of the lock echoed in the silence, sharp as a stab in my nerve-wracking thoughts. My whole body froze. My breathing seemed to stop. Someone entered the room. I was on the second floor. The only exit was through the window, but climbing out now would be tantamount to confessing to breaking in. And who opened the door? One of the two robbers or Mr. Ellis? No matter who it was, being discovered at that moment would have meant that everything would fail. In this life-threatening moment, I didn't hesitate for a second. I rushed under the desk, rolled myself into the most hidden corner. The heavy wooden table was covered with a long cloth that reached the floor, which fortunately concealed my body. I held my breath, my heart hammered in my chest, and I just begged that the person would not discover me. The door opened slowly. The light from the hallway poured in, revealing a tall silhouette. It wasn't the robbers. It wasn't Mr. Ellis either. It was a completely strange man. Exactly the one who had appeared in the first video. The sly man who had argued with Sterling. Why was he here at this exact moment? He didn't come alone. Behind him was one of Scarface S's robbers. Boss, everything is going according to plan, the robber said as he closed the door. His voice was respectful. The old woman is scared to death and is showing us where she hid the money under the sink. Boss, I froze. This strange man was the mastermind behind everything. Not Scarface S. It turned out that Jordan and I had inadvertently poked a bigger hornet's nest than we thought. Our plan to use someone else had been exploited by another and had turned into a game within a game. Good, said the man who was called the boss. His voice was deep and radiated power and cruelty. The money is secondary. Did you find what I need? Yes. Not yet, boss. I searched the old woman's bedroom, but found nothing but money and gold. Fool. What do I care about her money and gold? The man snarled. It must be in this room. Sterling was clever. He hid the evidence somewhere here. Search thoroughly. If you don't find it, I'll make your life hell. Asterisk evidence. Evidence. Asterisk so. This man was also looking for the evidence Sterling had left behind. Our goal was the same. I lay under the desk. Cold sweat ran down my back. I held the USB stick tightly in my palm. The thing they were desperately searching for was right here, separated from them only by a thin layer of wood. The robber began to ransack the room. He pulled out the drawers, threw papers and notebooks onto the floor. The loud noise made me flinch. Boss, there's nothing here. Just old papers, the robber said after a while. The boss cursed. He paced back and forth in the room. The sound of his leather shoes on the wooden floor sounded heavy. Damn it. Where did that guy hide it? It can't just vanish. If that comes to light, we're all dead. He stopped right in front of the desk, separated from me only by the long tablecloth. I could smell the scent of his expensive cigar smoke. My heart threatened to jump out of my chest. Suddenly, the wail of police sirens sounded from a distance. It was getting closer and closer. Damn it, the police. The robber panicked. Boss, what do we do now? The boss also looked confused. What is Scarface us doing? Why did he betray us? Fine, we'll retreat for now. We didn't find anything today. Go downstairs and tell the other guy to escape through the back exit. Hurry. The robber hastily opened the door and disappeared. The boss didn't leave immediately. He stayed put. His gaze, sharp as a knife, scanned the room one more time. He looked at the bookshelf, at the pictures on the wall, and then he bent down and looked under the desk. His gaze and mine met through the small gap in the tablecloth. For a moment, the whole world seemed to stand still. He saw me. His eyes widened in shock, and then immediately changed to a deadly, cruel expression. You. He hadn't finished the sentence. I kicked the desk leg with all my strength. The heavy wooden table was shoved forward and slammed hard against his shin. He screamed in pain, staggering back. I seized the opportunity, crawled out of the hiding place under the desk, didn't think for a second, and rushed straight to the window. Stop, he roared behind me. I had no other choice. I climbed onto the windowsill, closed my eyes, and jumped. The impact on the corrugated iron roof below hurt like hell, but I dared not stop. I crawled over the roof, slid down the incline, and then jumped into the small alley behind. I didn't know if I was injured. I only knew I had to run as fast as I could. The police sirens were very close. Behind me, I could still hear the furious cursing of the man. My whole body ached, but fear drowned everything out. I ran to our meeting point where Jordan and Elias were waiting in the car. Amara, are you all right? Jordan was horrified when she saw me. Drive fast. I gasped, clutching the USB stick tightly. The car sped through the night, leaving behind the chaotic house and a partially revealed secret. Who is this man? Why did he know about the evidence Sterling had left behind? And did he have something to do with my husband's disappearance? The USB stick in my hand was now not only hope, but also deadly evidence. The car sped through the night, taking us away from the turbulent street. I sat in the back seat, leaning against the backrest, trying to calm my gasping breath. My whole body was still trembling, not from cold, but from shock and extreme fear. The image of the foreign man's cruel eyes haunted me, cold and deadly. Amara, are you okay? Are you hurt? Elias asked anxiously through the rearview mirror as he drove. I shook my head, my voice strained. No, just a few scrapes. I pushed up my sleeve. A long scratch was bleeding slightly from the friction with the corrugated iron roof, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the panic in my soul. Who are they? Who is that man? We were tricked, said Jordan, sitting in the passenger seat. Her face was extremely tense. Our plan was exploited by someone else. This man is much more dangerous than my parents. We returned to Jordan's safe apartment. As soon as we were inside, Elias immediately checked the security system. Jordan got the first aid kit to carefully disinfect and bandage my wounds. When I saw her concern and kindness, a warm feeling flowed through me. Amidst the misfortune, I was not alone. Tell us what happened in there, Jordan asked. After making sure I was all right, I took a deep breath and told the entire story. From the moment I broke into the study, discovered the empty box and the memory card, to the moment of confrontation with the strange man and my last-minute escape. When I told them how the man ordered the robber to look for evidence, both Elias's and Jordan's faces changed color. So this man is also looking for it, Elias said, holding the USB stick I had given him in his hand. His eyes were full of thought. That proves that the content in here is extremely important. Maybe it's the key to the lives of many people. Without hesitation, he plugged the USB stick into the laptop. This time, we were not excited or eager, but tense and anxious. We knew that what we were about to see could be a terrible secret. The USB stick didn't contain many files, only a single audio file and an encrypted text file. Elias opened the audio file first. Again, a dialogue sounded, but this time the sound was much clearer, probably recorded with a professional device. I immediately recognized the voices of 3 people, Sterling, Mr. Ellis, and the strange man. Sterling, don't be so stubborn, Mr. Ellis said pleadingly, his voice mixed with fear. Give the original plans and all the documents back to Uncle Victor. You can't win against him. Uncle Victor, who is that? I asked Jordan, but she shook her head too. I won't give them up. Sterling's voice said sharply and full of indignation. Dad, this is not just a project. It's my life's work. Why are you betraying me? Why are you selling it to someone like him? What do you know? The voice of the man named Victor rang out, condescending and arrogant. Business means you have to use dirty tricks. You are talented, but you are too naive. This project will become a golden goose in my hands. In your hands, it's just a pile of worthless papers. Listen to your father. Take this money and disappear with your wife and son. Consider it a way to save your life. I don't need your money. I will report you. And Dad, too. Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, all the things you have done. Sterling shouted. A long silence followed. Then Victor's voice sounded icy cold and terrifying. Do you think you have a chance? Don't you know who I am? Fine. If you want to die, I will grant you that wish. Ellis, I'm giving you 1 week to handle your son. If not, we will make your whole family's life hell. The recording ended there, leaving a deadly silence in the room. My whole body trembled. So it was clear. The strange man named Victor was the mastermind. He had teamed up with my own father-in-law to steal Sterling's beloved project. And when Sterling refused, he ordered my father-in-law to handle his own son. Sterling's disappearance was no longer speculation. It was a planned murder. Tears rolled down my cheeks again, but this time they were tears of extreme hatred. Elias gently patted my shoulder to comfort me. Amara, don't cry. We have to be strong. Sterling sacrificed his life to protect this evidence. We must not disappoint him. He turned to the computer screen. Now we have to see what the other file contains. The text file was very complexly encrypted. Elias, with his professional hacking skills, needed almost an hour to break through the firewall. When the first lines appeared, we all held our breath. It was not a project plan. It was a testament that Sterling had written with all his clarity and pain. To Amara, my beloved wife, if you read these lines, I am probably no longer among the living. The letter began with loving words. He apologized for not being able to protect me and give me a fulfilling life. Then he told the whole truth. The Alpharetta Housing Development Project, his child, was not just an ordinary real estate project. It was a green project that used the most advanced renewable energy technologies. A project that could change the face of the entire region. But precisely because of this enormous potential, Victor Thorne, a notorious real estate mogul in the criminal underworld, had set his sights on it. Victor had used his contacts and dirty methods to put pressure on and force my father-in-law's firm to sell the project at a bargain price, and my father-in-law, out of fear of Victor's power and greed for the short-term profit, had agreed to betray his own son's life's work. Sterling had found out. He had tried to prevent it and collected evidence about Victor's illegal activities, from money laundering and tax evasion to threats and seizing land from local landowners. He hadn't expected that his father, whom he had always respected, could become so cruel because of money. Sterling's handwriting expressed deep pain. He has chosen to stand on the side of evil. He gave me a plane ticket and a large amount of money, demanding that I leave the country and forget everything. But I can't do that. I can't close my eyes to the crime. I can't leave you alone. I have decided to stay and fight until the end. And at the end of the letter, there was a paragraph that made my whole body freeze. Amara, if something happens to me, trust no one in my family, not even Jordan. Not even Jordan. The last lines in Sterling's testament hit my strained mind like an invisible sledgehammer. My whole body froze. My breathing seemed to stop. I slowly raised my head, my gaze confused and suspicious, and stared at the young woman sitting right next to me. Jordan, the sister-in-law I had just given my full trust to, the only ally I thought I had. Was she also part of this cruel game? Jordan was no less stunned. She stared at the lines on the laptop screen. Her beautiful face was chalk white. Not a drop of blood was left on it. No, he can't be serious, she stammered. Her voice trembled. Sterling, why did he write that? What did I do wrong? Elias, sitting next to her, was also frozen. The entire room again fell into a stifling silence, but this time the silence was not the silence of unity, but the silence of distrust, of the invisible wall that had just been erected between us. I looked at Jordan, trying to find a sign of falsehood in her eyes, but all I saw was panic, hurt, and extreme pain. She was also shocked. Couldn't believe that her brother whom she loved so much could distrust her. I don't know anything. I swear it, Amara. Jordan broke down, weeping. Tears of anger ran down her cheeks. For 3 years, I searched for the truth alone. I hate my parents. I hate Victor. I just want justice for my brother. Why didn't he trust me? The pain in her voice was too real. It didn't sound like acting, but Sterling's last words, the words of a man facing death, couldn't be a joke either. There must be a reason, a problem that Jordan herself was unaware of. Please calm down, said Elias, who was the first to regain his composure. He looked at me and then at Jordan. Sterling wrote these lines when he was cornered. Maybe he discovered something that made him distrust everyone. We can't condemn Jordan based on a single sentence. There must be a reason. Elias's words helped me calm down a little. Right. I couldn't panic. The most important thing now was to find the reason for Sterling's warning. Jordan, try to remember, I tried to keep my voice steady. Did anything happen between you and Sterling shortly before he disappeared? Or did you unintentionally pass on information to your parents? Jordan sobbed, trying to rummage through her memories. No, nothing. Everything between him and me was normal. He even gave me a large amount of money and told me to go on vacation for a while and distract myself, not to stay home. He said something unpleasant would soon happen at home. I thought he was just being overcautious. She paused, her eyes widening as if something occurred to her. Oh yes, one thing happened. About 2 weeks before he left, I lost my cell phone. You lost your cell phone? Elias and I asked simultaneously. Yes. Jordan nodded. Her face was full of regret. I was at a bar with friends that day and drank a little too much. The next morning when I woke up, my phone was gone. I searched everywhere but couldn't find it. I just thought I had been careless or had been stolen. I immediately got a new SIM card. A lost cell phone. This detail seemed small, but in this situation, it could be the most important link. The phone wasn't lost, Elias said. His voice became sharp. It was stolen, and the thieves were your parents. They read all the messages. They knew Sterling suspected them. They even knew he was collecting evidence. And they also knew that you were the only person he trusted. And that's why I continued, my throat constricted. That's why Sterling thought you had betrayed him and passed the secret on to your parents. The warning wasn't because he hated her, but because he was so hurt when he thought that even his sister, whom he trusted the most, was on the side of the enemies. When Jordan heard that, she collapsed with her face on the table, sobbing. Injustice and regret tormented her. Just because of a moment of carelessness, she had unintentionally put her brother in a more dangerous situation and had to carry the unjust stigma of a traitor for 3 years. I put my hand on her shoulder to comfort her. It's not your fault. You are also a victim. Now is not the time to blame yourself. We know the truth. What we have to do now is to make the criminals pay the price, exonerate you, and get justice for Sterling. The truth was revealed. The distrust between us was resolved. Now we were even more closely connected and determined. But a bigger question remained. Was Sterling really dead or just missing, as Victor had suggested? And if he was still alive, where was he? The question of whether Sterling was still alive hung heavily in the oppressive and unsettling air. Deep down, I always held a tiny spark of hope, a persistent belief that he was still somewhere in this world, waiting for us to find him. But reason told me that given the cruelty of Victor and the complicity of his own parents, the chance of his survival was almost zero. We can't just guess here, Elias said, breaking the stifling silence. He pointed to the laptop screen where the audio file of the conversation between Sterling and Victor was still open. The key is here, Victor said. I'm giving you 1 week to handle him. Handle can have many meanings. It doesn't necessarily mean kill. Elias's words were like a fresh wind, reigniting the flame of hope in Jordan and me. Right? Handle could mean to hold him, to threaten him, to force him to silence. But if he's still alive, where have my parents been hiding him for the past 3 years? Jordan asked skeptically. They alone weren't capable of doing something that big. They weren't capable. But Victor could have been, I said. An ice-cold guess formed in my head. Victor is the mastermind. Maybe my father-in-law didn't dare to kill his own son. He handed Sterling over to Victor, and Victor is probably holding him captive. This guess was terrible but very logical. It explained why there was no trace of Sterling. Why a powerful man like Victor personally had to come looking for the evidence. He was not only afraid that his business secrets would be revealed, but also afraid that his crime of kidnapping and illegal detention would come to light. If that's true, we have to find the place. Where Victor is holding Sterling captive, Elias said, his face very serious, but he's an old fox. His movements are very secretive. It's not easy to find his secret base. Our investigation hit another dead end. We had evidence of economic crimes, but not a single clue about where Sterling might be held. Time passed, and with each day, the hope of finding him diminished. Just at the moment when we felt the most desperate, Jordan received a call. The number belonged to a private clinic in Asheville, North Carolina. Her facial expression changed from surprise to shock. Hello, what? My mother had an accident. She quickly switched to speakerphone. On the other end was the voice of a nurse. Yes. Is this the family of Mrs. Celeste Vance? The patient had a traffic accident, quite serious injuries, and is currently being treated in our clinic as an emergency. We asked the family to come immediately to take care of the formalities. Elias and I looked at each other stunned. Mrs. Celeste had an accident? Why in Asheville, North Carolina? What was she doing there? A gut feeling told me, this is no coincidence. We'll come right away, Jordan answered hurriedly and hung up. She turned to me. Her gaze was complicated. Amara, I have to go. Despite everything, she is my mother. I understood her dilemma. No matter how much she hated her mother, she was still the woman who had given birth to her. All right, go. But be very careful. I don't think something is right here. Why Asheville, North Carolina? I find it strange too. Jordan nodded. But I can't not go. Elias, please stay here with Amara. I'll let you know immediately if there's anything new. With that, she quickly got dressed and left. As I watched her hurry away, a bad feeling rose within me. I felt that Jordan was walking into a trap that had already been set. After Jordan left, only Elias and I remained in the room. The worry about Jordan and the dead end in the search for Sterling made the atmosphere very oppressive. Elias tried to comfort me, but he was confused himself. Amara, think again, Elias said, trying to find a new direction. Did Sterling leave you anything else besides this USB stick, a gift, a souvenir, a casual word? I tried to rack my memory. Other than the wooden box, he didn't give me anything special. Wait. About a month before his disappearance. It was my birthday. He gave me a rather strange gift. No flowers, no jewelry, but a small cactus. A cactus. Elias frowned. Was it anything special? I don't know either, I admitted. It was just a normal cactus, the kind with long spines and red flowers. He said the cactus symbolized strength and perseverance. He wished that I would always be so steadfast no matter what difficulties I went through. I took it with me when I left the house. It's now on Jordan's windowsill in this apartment. My words seemed to catch Elias's attention. He hurried to the balcony where I had placed the plant. He looked at it for a while and then suddenly cried, Amara, come here. I quickly ran over. Elias pointed to a cactus spine near the base of the plant. The spine looked normal, but when I looked closely, I noticed that it was different from the others. It wasn't as sharp, and its color was slightly darker. Elias used a small pair of tweezers to carefully remove the spine. And then, we couldn't believe our eyes. It wasn't a spine. It was a tiny piece of metal that was perfectly disguised. And when Elias carefully opened it, inside was a GPS tracking chip. The GPS chip, a small, almost invisible electronic device, was so cleverly hidden in the spine of a cactus. Elias and I were stunned, standing frozen for several seconds. My head spun. I tried to connect the events. Sterling was Sterling again. He had planned everything in advance. The seemingly simple birthday gift was, in fact, a lifeline, a secret path he had left for himself. My God, Sterling, he's really too smart. Elias exclaimed, his voice full of admiration mixed with surprise. He foresaw that he would be kidnapped. He hid this chip in the hope that you would find it one day. But why a cactus? Why didn't he tell me directly? I asked, my heart full of questions. Because he couldn't, Elias explained. His face was very serious. At that time, Sterling knew he was being monitored. Every call, every message could be intercepted. He couldn't say it directly because it would have put you in danger too. He could only use a metaphor, a way that only you, his wife, could understand. The cactus symbolizes strength and perseverance, and perhaps also a place that is dry and remote. Elias's explanation was like a ray of light shining into the last dark corners. I understood. I understood Sterling's heart. He didn't just want me to be strong. He wanted me to look for him, to save him. We have to activate it immediately, I said eagerly. We have to find out where he is. Elias didn't hesitate. He quickly connected the chip to the laptop. With a few professional maneuvers, a digital map appeared on the screen, and a small red dot began to flash, slowly appearing on the map. We both held our breath, staring at the screen. The red dot was not in Atlanta, nor in Alpharetta. It was located in a remote coastal region in North Carolina, near Asheville. Asheville, North Carolina. My heart clenched. Mrs. Celeste's accident. The call from the clinic in Asheville. All of it was no coincidence. It was a trap. A trap to lure Jordan there to separate her from me while they moved Sterling somewhere else. Jordan is in danger. I screamed. Fear flooded me. Elias also realized the seriousness of the situation. He quickly called Jordan, but her phone was unreachable. Damn it. Elias slammed his fist on the table. They struck. We have to go there immediately, but just the two of us isn't enough, I said, panicking. The place is surely heavily guarded. What should we do then? Call the police, but we don't have direct evidence. We don't need that, Elias said. His gaze suddenly sharpened, completely different from his usual student look. He took out his cell phone and dialed a strange number. Hello, is this Uncle Ben? This is Elias. It's an emergency. Sterling is being held in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm sending you the coordinates immediately. Jordan is also in danger there. I need your help. This time, we have to give everything. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. Then a deep voice sounded. Gather at the old meeting place in 30 minutes. Bring everything. The call ended. I looked at Elias confused. Uncle Ben? Equipment? Elias, who are you really? Elias looked at me intently. Amara, there are things I can't tell you yet. Sterling and I are not just friends. We are brothers in another family. Uncle Ben is the leader. You just need to know that today, even if we have to turn all of Asheville upside down, we will bring Sterling and Jordan back safely. The secret in Elias's words made me even more confused, but his determined and trustworthy eyes calmed me down. I knew I was no longer a lonely woman. Behind me stood an entire force I had never known existed. Sterling's brothers, who had been through thick and thin with him. We had no time to lose. Elias quickly copied all the data from the USB stick onto an external hard drive and gave it to me. Amara, you can't come with us. It's too dangerous. Take this and go to a really safe place I've arranged and wait for our message. No, I said resolutely. Sterling is my husband. Jordan is my sister-in-law. I can't wait idly. I have to come with you. I looked him directly in the eyes. But Elias, I won't stand in your way. Let me at least be nearby. I need to see them safe with my own eyes. My determination finally convinced Elias. He nodded. All right, but you must promise to follow my instructions. Absolutely. We stormed out of the apartment, speeding into the Atlanta night. A breathless rescue mission was about to begin. Elias's car sped down the highway toward Asheville, North Carolina. The night sky was pitch black and heavy, as if a storm was about to break. The location where Sterling and Jordan were being held was an abandoned mansion on a cliff overlooking the lake, completely isolated from the residential area. When we arrived, almost a dozen men in black suits with cold faces were already waiting. Where's Uncle Ben? Elias asked. The man who looked like the leader shook his head. Uncle Ben said he had something more important to do. We'll just stick to the plan. The plan was quickly drawn up. They split into two assault teams. One team attacked directly to distract. The other, led by Elias, sneaked along the cliff wall at the back to infiltrate. I was instructed to stay in the car and watch through the screen connected to a drone camera. The attack began. Dry shots with silencers echoed through the night. The camera screen trembled. I held my breath, following every step of Elias's team. They moved professionally and coordinately, like in an action movie. They quickly neutralized the outer circle and entered the mansion. But just as Elias's team was breaking down the front door, a loud explosion sounded from the basement. The whole mansion shook. Stop. They're going to blow everything up. Elias yelled over the radio. Everyone in. Find them immediately. My heart threatened to jump out of my chest. I couldn't stand idly by any longer. I opened the car door and ran toward the smoking mansion. I had to find them. Inside, there was chaos. Furniture was scattered. Victor's henchmen lay motionless on the floor. I ran through the rooms, desperately calling the names of my husband and my sister-in-law. Sterling. Jordan. And then at the end of the corridor, I saw a slightly ajar basement door. Without hesitation, I rushed down the basement stairs. The stairs were dark and damp. When I reached the bottom, a terrible sight met me. Jordan was tied to a pillar. Her mouth gagged. Not far away, an emaciated, bearded man lay on an old iron bed. Victor stood there, a pistol pointed at the man's head. Next to him stood Mr. Ellis and Mrs. Celeste. Everyone freeze. Victor shouted as he saw Elias's team and me rush in. Take one more step and your beloved son is dead. Although the man on the bed had changed a lot, I recognized his eyes, his gaze. It was Sterling. He was still alive. Mom, Dad, why are you here? Jordan stammered after the gag was removed from her mouth. You foolish child. Mrs. Celeste hissed. The accident was just a setup to lure you here. All to get your beloved sister-in-law to hand over the evidence. It turned out that everything had been a trap from the beginning. A trap aimed at all three of us. The damp, oppressive basement suddenly became a deadly stage. The only yellowish light of a ceiling lamp cast distorted, ominous shadows on the wall. The pungent smell of gunpowder mixed with the scent of mold and fear. I stood there, confronted by Victor's black gun muzzle, and behind him stood all the people who had plunged my life into a tragedy. Mr. Ellis, Mrs. Celeste, and the man I had longed for lay there, weak and fragile like a candle in the wind. You are very clever, Victor smirked, the smile of a man who thought he had secured victory. You made it this far, but the road ends here. Hand over the USB stick and all copies. Then I will let your husband and you die gently. Let him go. Elias roared behind me. He and his brothers had taken up positions, their weapons loaded. But no one dared to make a reckless move as long as Sterling was held hostage. The situation was tense as a tightly stretched wire. Every small movement could trigger a massacre. Amara, don't do it. Don't give him anything. Sterling's weak voice rang out. Although he had been held captive for 3 years, even though his body was weakened, his gaze at me was still resolute. The evidence must come to light. You are still so bombastic. Victor pressed the gun muzzle harder against Sterling's temple, making him flinch in pain. I'll count to 3. If you don't throw the USB stick over, he gets a bullet first. 1. My whole body trembled. I looked at Elias, pleading for help. He shook his head slightly, signaling me to stay calm. 2. Stop. I screamed. My voice was broken. All right, I'll give it to you. Don't hurt him. Trembling, I took the external hard drive out of my pocket and slowly placed it on the floor. Here it is. Let him go. Victor laughed wildly. A cruel laugh. Do you think I'm stupid? Kick it over here. I did what he said, lightly pushing the hard drive with my foot across the cement floor toward him. One of Victor's henchmen hurriedly bent down and picked it up. He plugged it into a prepared laptop. Boss, this is it. All the data is here. Good. Very good. Victor nodded. His face was triumphant. He looked at me, his eyes full of mockery. Love is really something stupid. For a dying man, you are ready to throw everything away. Now, as a reward for your obedience, I will let you die together. He raised the pistol and aimed directly at me. I closed my eyes. Only the image of little Zion appeared in my mind. My child, I'm sorry, a deafening shot rang out, but not from Victor's weapon. I flinched, feeling no pain. I slowly opened my eyes. The pistol and Victor's hand had fallen to the floor. His arm was bleeding. He stared, stunned at the basement stairs where the shot had come from. Everyone turned around. There, out of the darkness, stood a middle-aged man, composed, but his eyes were sharp as a knife. In his hand, he held a handgun that was still smoking. Uncle Ben. Elias cried in astonishment. The man referred to as Uncle Ben said nothing, just slowly descended the stairs. Behind him, dozens of heavily armed police officers stormed in and quickly overwhelmed all of Victor's henchmen. Victor, the show is over, Uncle Ben said. His voice was deep and full of authority. Victor looked at Uncle Ben. His face was chalk white. Who are you? Just an old friend of yours. Uncle Ben smiled faintly. Someone who has been watching you for 20 years and waited for this day to collect an old debt. Mr. Ellis and Mrs. Celeste turned pale when they saw that the situation had changed. They hastily knelt down, weeping and pleading. Spare us. We were forced. This is all Victor's fault. We have nothing to do with it. But it was too late. The police came and put handcuffs on them. Mrs. Celeste didn't stop screaming and cursing me as the jinx who had ruined their entire family. Mr. Ellis only lowered his head and silently accepted his fate. In the chaos, I quickly ran to Sterling. He had passed out from exhaustion. Elias and the others also quickly freed Jordan. Our reunion took place amidst tears and the wailing police sirens. A few days later, when everything had calmed down, Uncle Ben told me the whole truth. It turned out that he was not only the leader of the underworld group that Elias and Sterling belonged to, he was also the biological brother of one of the victims who had died in a construction accident years ago. An incident also caused by Victor to silence witnesses. For 20 years, he had secretly collected evidence and built up his own power just to one day overthrow Victor's criminal empire. Sterling had accidentally come into contact with him during his investigation into his own father. The two men with the same goal decided to work together. So, Sterling's disappearance was part of the plan, Uncle Ben explained. Sterling knew that he couldn't confront Victor and his own father directly. He pretended to surrender and allowed himself to be captured to set a perfect trap. He believed that only his feigned death could lower Victor's vigilance and, more importantly, wake you up, Amara. He knew that only love and the pain of loss could make a good-natured woman like you strong enough to search for the truth yourself. I froze. Tears rolled down my cheeks again. It turned out that everything, my pain, my despair, my path to justice, was all included in his plan. He had risked his own life, betting on our love and my strength. And the hard drive was fake. Uncle Ben smiled. He had already sent the original to the FBI when you found it. What you gave Victor was just bait to buy time. The trial against Victor and his accomplices proceeded quickly. With irrefutable evidence, Victor received the maximum sentence. Mr. Ellis and Mrs. Celeste also paid the price for their crimes with long years behind bars. 1 year later, on a sunny afternoon in Asheville, North Carolina, I sat on the shore, watching two men, one tall and one small, playing with the waves. Little Zion laughed loudly in his father's arms. Sterling had almost fully recovered after long therapy. The physical wounds were healed, but the scars on his soul might never completely fade. Mommy, come here and play with Daddy and me. Sterling's call brought me back to the present. I smiled, stood up, and ran toward them. Sterling turned around, opened his arms, and hugged me and our son. I'm sorry, he whispered in my ear. I'm sorry I had to put you through all of that. I shook my head and leaned against his shoulder. It doesn't matter. Everything is over. The most important thing is that our family is back together now. Jordan and Elias had also become a couple. They decided to leave the hostilities of the underworld behind and start a small technology firm together to live a peaceful life. I occasionally visited Mrs. Celeste in prison. She had aged greatly, had lost her former malice, and was only quiet and lonely. She said nothing, just cried. I also said nothing, just silently placed a basket of fruit down and left. Forgiveness is difficult, but forgetting is perhaps the true peace. The sun slowly sank into the sea, coloring the entire sky in a warm orange-yellow. I looked at my husband and my son. My heart was filled with simple happiness. The storm was truly over. After everything, we had found the sunrise for our own lives. A sunrise without lies, without hatred, only with love and faith in tomorrow. Now, after everything I've lived through, the betrayals, the fear, the secrets that nearly crushed me, I realized something important. Life has a way of pushing us into the dark, so we learn how to create our own light. No one came to save me. I had to take the first brave step myself. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change the whole story. So, if you're going through something heavy, don't let anyone convince you that you're powerless. You'd be amazed at the strength you discover once you decide you deserve better. What would you have done in my shoes when all hope seemed lost and everyone around you turned out to be a lie? Tell me what you think, I really want to know.